Daniel leaned back against the metal wall of the bustling trade station, wiping the grease off his hands onto a worn rag. The hum of engines, the chatter of alien merchants, and the occasional shout from a nearby corridor created a constant background that he had grown used to over the years. Being one of the few humans in this part of the galaxy had its challenges. He often felt like a curiosity, a creature whose humor and ways of speaking were misunderstood. Still, he liked the chaos. It made life interesting. Tonight, the station's main hall was crowded with beings from dozens of different planets. Some had smooth, glimmering skin, others had scales, and a few had more limbs than Daniel had fingers. He had come with his coworkers for a small gathering after finishing a long day of repairs. They drank synthetic ale and joked about the station's endless maintenance issues. After a while, the conversation turned to something more frivolous. "Daniel, you're terrible at bets," said a tall, four-armed alien with pale blue skin. "Lose again and we all get a show." Daniel rolled his eyes, pretending to be offended. "Oh, really? A show? What kind of show are we talking about?" He leaned forward dramatically, sloshing a little of his drink. "The kind where you entertain us, do something bold, do something memorable." Another laughed. He chuckled. All right, I'll give you something memorable." "Everyone listen up." He stood on a small crate, drawing the attention of several curious onlookers. "Who wants to marry me?" he yelled, pointing vaguely at the crowd, grinning. For a moment, the room exploded in laughter. Some aliens tilted their heads, unsure if humans actually joked like this. Some laughed loudly, clapping their claws and tentacles in amusement. Daniel laughed too, but he noticed a movement at the edge of the crowd. A figure stepped forward, moving with a grace that made heads turn. She was tall, taller than any human Daniel had seen. Her skin had a soft purple hue, glowing faintly in the light. Her eyes were deep, dark, and seemed to look straight through him. Hair as black as space itself flowed down her back, and a long, fitted cloak trailed behind her as she approached. Daniel froze for a moment. "I accept," she said, her voice smooth but firm. Every word held a weight that made the chatter around them drop. The laughter died and the room went silent. "Wait, what?" Daniel stammered, stepping down from the crate. It was just a joke." The alien Lyra, as she later introduced herself, smiled slightly but did not retract her words. "I do not see it as a joke. Your courage to speak openly in front of many witnesses is rare. In my culture, words spoken publicly carry weight. To speak them is to commit." Daniel swallowed hard. He had read a few things about the Velkari, the species she belonged to. Tales of them were often exaggerated, warning that they were fierce, solitary, and bound by strict codes of honor. He had laughed off the rumors before, thinking they were just legends told to scare traders. But standing here facing her, he realized the stories were only half true. She was strong, disciplined, and commanding, but also intelligent, and he noticed, a little lonely. I didn't mean anything by it," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It was just a silly human joke, really." Lyra's gaze did not waver. "Intent matters less than action. You spoke. That is enough for me. You have invited me into a bond whether you understand it or not." The crowd murmured quietly, whispering to each other. A few aliens shifted nervously, clearly worried about what would happen next. Daniel's coworkers tried to laugh it off, but even they could see that Lyra was serious. He took a step back, suddenly aware of the implications. If he refused, it might insult her and potentially anger her clan. He had no idea what that could mean, but he did not want to find out the hard way. "Okay," he said slowly. Maybe we should talk about this somewhere private?" Lyra inclined her head. "Agreed. Let us speak." They walked to a quiet corner of the station, away from the crowd, where the hum of machinery was still present but the whispers had faded. Daniel tried to gather his thoughts. He was fascinated, scared, and overwhelmed all at once. Lyra did not look like any creature he had ever met. She radiated a calm authority that made it hard to think clearly. As they talked, he learned more about her. Lyra was a Velkari noble, a warrior who had trained her entire life to uphold her clan's traditions. Her people rarely allowed outsiders to participate in their bonds, especially humans. She was impressed not by his strength, but by his honesty, his willingness to speak without fear. "I do not expect you to understand immediately," she said. "But what you have done cannot be undone. You spoke. You invited me. Now we must see what this bond means." Daniel nodded, still unsure what to do. Part of him wanted to run to escape this strange and intimidating situation, but another part of him felt curious. There was something about Lyra, something beyond the tales of monsters and danger that drew him in. She was disciplined, serious, and he realized with a small shock, kind in ways that few beings he had met could be. Over the next hours, they walked through the station together. Lyra explained her culture, the Velkari emphasis on public words and honor, and how bonds were taken seriously, not lightly. Daniel listened, fascinated. He had always thought humans were small players in the galaxy, but here he was, caught in a situation that could change everything. As night fell, the station lights reflected off the metallic walls and the countless ships docked nearby. Daniel felt an unusual mix of dread and excitement. His life had always been ordinary: repair ships, tell a joke, maybe flirt with someone at the bar. Now the joke had become real. He could not ignore the gravity of it, and he realized that running away might not be an option. Lyra stopped at the edge of the docking bay, her eyes scanning the stars. "The galaxy is full of danger," she said quietly, "and you have now become part of it, whether you intend to or not. You may leave, but know that choice comes with consequences." Daniel looked up at her, heart racing. He did not fully understand the path ahead, but he felt an unshakable sense that life had changed forever. The joke he had shouted in a crowded hall had bound him to a creature far more extraordinary than he had ever imagined. And though fear whispered in the back of his mind, a small part of him was thrilled. For the first time, the universe felt vast, alive, and full of possibility. As the station quieted for the night, Daniel and Lyra stood together, two very different beings linked by a single unintended act. He wondered what the next day would bring, but deep down, he knew there was no turning back. The Velkari's honor was not a game, and he had unknowingly entered a story that would shape not only his life, but perhaps the perception of humanity in this part of the galaxy. The stars outside the docking bay glimmered like distant fires, and Daniel realized he would have to step forward into the unknown, guided by courage, humor, and a willingness to understand a world far beyond his own. The joke was over. The story had just begun. Daniel could not sleep that night. Every corner of his small quarters in the station seemed smaller than before, as if the walls themselves were pressing in to remind him of what had happened. He kept replaying the events over and over. The joke, the laughter, the way Lyra had stepped forward, so composed, so commanding. And then her words, "Your courage to speak openly is rare." That phrase rang in his mind, echoing like a warning, a promise, and an invitation all at once. By dawn, Daniel decided he could not avoid the situation any longer. He knew he would have to understand Lyra and the bond she claimed they had entered. It was not just about a joke anymore. It was about survival, diplomacy, and something that felt strangely like fate. He left his quarters, carrying only a small pack with essentials, and made his way toward the docking bay where Lyra's ship waited. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with a subtle purple hue, reflecting the station lights in strange, geometric patterns. As he approached, he noticed faint hums and vibrations that suggested energy flowing through the hull, energy that did not seem mechanical but biological, almost alive. Lyra stood at the entrance waiting, her posture perfect, her eyes assessing him carefully. "You came," she said, her voice calm yet powerful. "I did. I need to understand," Daniel replied, trying to steady his voice. "I need to know what this means." Lyra stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The interior of the ship was spacious, but not like a human ship. The walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Soft light illuminated hallways lined with instruments and consoles that seemed to respond to her presence. "This is how my people live," she explained. "Our technology and biology are one. You will see things here you may not fully understand, but that is acceptable. Curiosity is the first step to comprehension." Daniel nodded, following her as she guided him deeper into the ship. He felt a mix of awe and nervousness. He had worked on starships before, but nothing with this level of elegance and organic integration. Every movement of the ship seemed intentional, harmonious, as if the vessel itself were a living being. As they walked, Lyra began to explain more about the Velkari. "We are bound by codes of honor older than most recorded histories," she said. "Words spoken in public, promises made before witnesses, cannot be dismissed lightly. To speak and not act is considered a failure of character." Daniel listened, fascinated. He realized that humans were often judged by different standards across the galaxy. Here, what he had considered a joke was a serious declaration. "I didn't know," he admitted. I didn't mean to commit anything. Intent matters less than action, Lyra replied, her gaze steady. Yet I sense honesty in you. That is why I chose to speak to you privately. Many would flee, deny, or attempt to trick me. You did not. That is rare. They reached a chamber that seemed both command center and living quarters. Soft chairs curved organically from the walls. Screens displayed star maps and communications from distant parts of the galaxy. Lyra gestured for him to sit. You must understand my expectations, she said. The bond is not merely symbolic. It may require your presence in matters of importance, matters of danger, and matters of trust. You may leave if you wish, but such a choice has consequences. Daniel swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. I want to understand, he said finally. I want to try. Lyra nodded, a hint of approval in her expression. Very well, then the first step is understanding each other's worlds. The next hours passed in careful discussion. Daniel learned about Velkhari customs, their social hierarchy, and their approach to energy and survival. Unlike humans, they did not rely on food in the traditional sense. Instead, they absorbed energy from their environment and from compatible species under strict ethical rules. Myths about their so-called blood drinking were greatly exaggerated, and he realized that fear often made them appear monstrous. You see, humans are often judged by their strength, Lyra said. But it is adaptability, creativity, and courage that truly define a partner. You may lack my combat skills, but your ability to navigate uncertainty is impressive. Daniel smiled weakly, though he felt unsure. I hope I can meet your expectations. Expectations are tools, not chains, she replied. You will shape them as you grow into this bond. Over the next day, Daniel accompanied Lyra to a training area aboard the ship. The Velkhari moved with astonishing speed and grace, practicing martial routines that looked like a blend of dance and combat. He tried to follow, stumbling often, but she did not mock him. Instead, she adjusted his posture, guided his movements, and occasionally demonstrated how a small, thoughtful action could create maximum effect. See, she said, strength is more than brute force. It is intelligence applied through body and mind. You may not be born a warrior, but you can learn to stand. Daniel was humbled. The Velkhari culture emphasized mastery, patience, and responsibility. Every gesture, every word, every choice carried meaning. He realized that humor alone could not navigate this world. He needed awareness and empathy. As night fell, a warning alarm sounded. The ship's sensors had detected multiple unknown vessels approaching. Lyra's expression hardened. They come for me, she said simply. Rival factions who fear change, who fear alliances outside Velkhari bloodlines. Daniel's heart raced. What do we do? Lyra's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. We adapt. We fight with strategy, not chaos. You will see that courage is often quiet, not loud. The next sequence of events tested him in ways he could not have imagined. They maneuvered the ship through asteroid fields, evading detection while assessing the approaching ship's capabilities. Lyra directed Daniel to operate consoles, calibrating shields and energy flow. Every decision mattered. Daniel felt fear, exhilaration, and determination mixing inside him. When the rival ships finally engaged, Daniel saw Lyra in action. She moved with precision, neutralizing threats without unnecessary destruction. And yet she paused to ensure he remained safe, guiding him in real time. Trust yourself, she told him. Your instincts are human, yes, but they are valuable. Daniel learned quickly. He adapted, contributing to the maneuvers with creative solutions. For example, when one of the rival ships tried to cut them off, he suggested using a nearby debris field to mask their movement. Lyra executed the plan flawlessly. In that moment, Daniel realized that HFY strength, the human ability to think, improvise, and take risks, was exactly what she needed. After the confrontation ended without bloodshed, Lyra spoke quietly. You have shown courage beyond your understanding. And you have preserved life, which is admirable in any species. Daniel exhaled deeply, feeling a mix of exhaustion and pride. I didn't know I could do that. Humans often underestimate themselves, Lyra said. Yet your heart, your resolve has proven true. Over the next hours, as the ship traveled toward a safe route, Lyra shared more of her world. She spoke of Velkhari history, their philosophies, and her loneliness. She had spent centuries moving between stations, training and guarding her clan's honor, but never forming bonds with outsiders. I accepted your words, she said softly, because I saw honesty where others saw folly. That is rare. Daniel listened intently. He realized that she valued traits he had always taken for granted: honesty, resilience, courage, and humor. And slowly, a sense of respect, trust, and even something deeper began to grow between them. By the end of part 2, Daniel had learned not only the risks of the bond he had entered, but also its potential. He had faced danger, adapted under pressure, and discovered that humans could contribute in ways that even a powerful alien warrior respected. He was no longer just a human trying to survive. He was a partner, a participant, and someone capable of standing beside Lyra. As the ship sailed silently through the stars, Daniel gazed at the distant lights of the station fading behind them. The galaxy seemed vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. Yet for the first time, he felt that he could meet those challenges, guided by courage, empathy, and the strange, extraordinary connection that had begun with a careless joke. Lyra stood beside him, her presence both reassuring and inspiring. "The universe will test us, Daniel," she said, "but we will face it together. That is the nature of bonds and the power of choices made openly and without fear." Daniel nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. The joke that had once seemed harmless had become a path into the unknown. And though fear lingered at the edges of his consciousness, he felt ready to step forward, to embrace the adventure, and to learn the true meaning of courage alongside the alien vampire who had unexpectedly taken him seriously. The stars stretched endlessly around Daniel as he stared out through the observation deck of Lyra's ship. The galaxy was alive with motion, planets, asteroids, and distant ships blinking faintly in the darkness, but nothing could compare to the turmoil he felt within. Over the past days, his life had shifted entirely. What had begun as a careless joke had turned into an accidental bond with an alien vampire noble, a connection that carried consequences he could not yet fully grasp. Lyra approached silently, her steps graceful, almost soundless. She placed a hand lightly on his shoulder, and Daniel felt an odd mixture of reassurance and anticipation. "You have learned quickly, Daniel," she said, "but the true test is ahead. Choices are not made in comfort, only in challenge." Daniel turned to face her, feeling the weight of those words. "I understand," he said, though his heart still raced. "I'm ready to face whatever comes." Lyra's eyes glimmered faintly. "Good, there are those who will test the bond we share. Some will attempt to break it, to use your human nature against you, and others will try to manipulate me. Your role is not to fight like me, but to stand like yourself. That is your strength." For the first time, Daniel felt a quiet confidence. He was not a Velkari warrior. He did not have centuries of training or the natural advantages of her kind. But he did have human ingenuity, courage, and resilience, qualities that, Lyra had told him, were just as valuable as strength. Before he could respond, the ship's sensors blared. Multiple fast-moving vessels had appeared on the edge of their detection range, closing in at an alarming speed. Lyra's expression sharpened immediately. "Rivals," she said. "They have tracked us from the station. They wish to capture or harm me, and by extension you." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had faced dangers before: storms, malfunctioning ships, even hostile traders, but this was different. This was deliberate, targeted. He glanced at Lyra, who moved with calm precision, her fingers dancing across the controls as if she were conducting an orchestra. "We must act quickly," she said. Daniel took a deep breath. "Tell me what to do." Lyra's eyes softened slightly, acknowledging his readiness. "Observe, learn, and trust your instincts. This is not only a test of skill, but of understanding. You will act when necessary, and your decisions will matter." The rival ships opened fire, beams of energy cutting across the darkness. Lyra maneuvered their vessel with fluid motion, slipping past attacks and using asteroid fields for cover. Daniel operated one of the consoles, following her instructions but also improvising. When a sensor indicated an incoming beam that her calculated path did not account for, he suggested a quick diversion using a nearby moon's gravitational pull. She adjusted immediately, nodding at him. "You think quickly," she said, almost a whisper, but Daniel felt it deeply. The next hour passed in tense coordination. Daniel and Lyra worked in tandem, blending Velkari precision with human creativity. He guided the ship through tight spaces, diverted energy to shields at crucial moments, and suggested maneuvers that even she admitted were clever. By the time the rival ships had given up, frustrated by their inability to predict or trap them, Daniel felt exhilarated and exhausted. Lyra leaned back, assessing the damage and the paths they had taken. "You have done well," she said. "You are beginning to understand what it means to stand beside me. This is the essence of partnership. Bravery alone is not enough. Comprehension, trust, and action together define strength." Daniel felt a swell of pride. "I didn't think I could do it, but I guess I did." She gave a small, approving smile. "Humans underestimate themselves. You see only what you fear, not what you are capable of. That is why the galaxy is full of surprises when humans act." Over the following days, Daniel continued to learn Lyra's ways. He adapted to her technology, her combat strategies, and even her cultural subtleties. He realized that humor, the very thing that had caused this adventure, could be a tool as well. Small jokes, shared in quiet moments, eased tension and fostered trust. Lyra, despite her formal training and noble background, seemed to enjoy his lightheartedness, though she rarely let her amusement show fully. One evening, as they traveled through a quiet sector, Daniel sat on a platform overlooking a nebula, its swirling colors casting reflections across the ship's organic walls. Lyra joined him silently. They watched the brilliant lights in contemplative silence. "I was lonely," Lyra said softly. Before your words, I moved through the galaxy, respected and feared, but alone. No one outside my species could understand my culture, my purpose. And now, you have." Daniel turned to her, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. I didn't know I could mean anything to someone like you." "You have shown bravery, ingenuity, and honesty," Lyra replied. "These qualities transcend species. They matter more than titles or strength. And I chose to recognize them in you, not because of a joke, but because your actions revealed truth." Daniel felt warmth in his chest, the kind that comes from understanding and connection. "I guess I'm glad my joke wasn't just a mistake then." Lyra's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Perhaps not. It has led us here to understanding and potential partnership. You are learning what it means to be human in a galaxy that often forgets the value of your kind." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert. Another group of ships approached, smaller but faster, clearly opportunists drawn by the previous skirmish. Lyra's expression hardened. "They believe the first failure makes us vulnerable. They are wrong." Daniel felt fear, but it was tempered by a strange excitement. "What should I do?" he asked. "Observe, act, and adapt," Lyra said. "You will not fight as I do. You will fight as yourself, and that will be enough." The next encounter tested him like never before. The smaller vessels attempted to trap them using unpredictable maneuvers. Daniel suggested using environmental factors, like radiation bursts from a nearby star, to create temporary cover. Lyra executed the plan, giving him space to direct part of the ship's energy output, deflecting attacks. Each action required precise timing and trust. When the final attack ended, Daniel exhaled deeply. I think we made it." Lyra studied him, her eyes unreadable at first. Then she nodded, clearly impressed. "Yes, you are learning, you are standing. That is the most important part." In the quiet aftermath, Daniel reflected on how far he had come. He had entered this situation as a confused human, caught by circumstance and misunderstanding. Now he was a participant, capable of making decisions that mattered and trusted by a powerful alien. He felt a sense of pride and belonging that he had never known before. Lyra, noticing his thoughts, spoke again. "You see, Daniel, courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. Your species is small in the galaxy, yes, but your hearts are large. That is why you survive. That is why you are capable of great influence, even among the mighty." Daniel looked at her, understanding finally dawning. His humor, his courage, his human nature, they were not weaknesses. They were strengths that complemented hers, creating a balance that neither could achieve alone. Days turned into weeks as they traveled together, facing occasional threats, exploring distant systems, and learning from each other. Daniel discovered that Lyra's reputation as a fierce Velkari noble was accurate, but incomplete. She was also compassionate, thoughtful, and fiercely protective. And in return, she saw the qualities in Daniel that made humans extraordinary: ingenuity, empathy, and unwavering resolve in the face of uncertainty. Eventually, they returned to the station where it all began, not as the same beings who had first shouted and stepped forward, but as partners bound by respect and understanding. The crowd that had once laughed now watched in awe as Daniel and Lyra appeared together, united not by jokes or fear, but by courage, choice, and shared experience. Daniel realized the galaxy would never see him the same way again, and he would never see himself the same. He had faced danger, learned to navigate alien culture, and discovered that the human heart, his heart, was capable of standing beside even the most formidable beings in the universe. Lyra turned to him, her hand brushing against his in a gesture of quiet trust. "You have done more than survive, Daniel. You have grown, and in doing so you have honored both yourself and your species." Daniel smiled, feeling the weight and freedom of that truth. "Then I guess this joke wasn't just a joke after all." The stars outside the station glittered like distant promises, and Daniel knew that this was only the beginning. Together, they would face the galaxy's challenges, proving that humanity, when brave and true, could stand alongside even the most extraordinary beings. And for the first time in his life, he felt that he truly belonged, not just among humans, but among the stars. As they prepared to leave once more, Daniel glanced at Lyra, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. The adventure they had begun with a single joke had grown into something far greater, a partnership built on courage, respect, and the unique strengths that only a human heart could bring to a universe full of wonders. And with that, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store together.